Egypt, Nile Valley, around 3000 BCE. A river rises, slowly, predictably unpredictable. Mud spreads across the land like a silent promise. When the water retreats, black soil remains, fertile, rare, alive. That mud is the foundation of everything. From the outside, ancient Egypt looks like religion carved in stone, gods, temples, pyramids. From the inside, it's something else entirely. It's an economy. One of the most efficient, centralized, and psychologically sophisticated economic systems ever created without money. No coins, no banks, no markets in the modern sense. And yet, debt exists, taxation exists, credit exists, inequality exists. This is the story of how an entire civilization turned food into power, records into control, and belief into enforcement. If at any moment this feels uncomfortably familiar, keep going. And when the mechanism finally clicks, you'll understand why Egypt lasted so long. Memphis, early dynastic period. The state is born before the individual knows what the state is. A farmer works his land. The land is not his. It belongs to the pharaoh, who belongs to the gods, who belong to order itself. The logic is airtight, circular, unquestionable. The farmer plants grain because the Nile allows it. He harvests because the sun agrees. And then the state appears. Not with soldiers, with scribes. They count, they measure, they write. How many sacks? 30. The reed pen scratches. Tax, 10. Once written, the number becomes reality. This is the first rule of the Egyptian economy. What is recorded is real. What is not recorded does not exist. Grain becomes currency long before anyone calls it that. Grain feeds workers, grain pays officials, grain funds monuments, grain buys loyalty, grain buys silence. The state builds granaries everywhere, massive mud brick structures, cool and dark, filled with surplus. The visual is simple, the implication is not. Whoever controls stored food controls time. A farmer can survive weeks without grain, maybe months. The state can survive generations. This is risk management at a civilizational scale. Old Kingdom, around 2600 BCE. Pyramids rise. From afar, they look like faith. Up close, they look like logistics. Thousands of workers arrive during flood season, when fields are submerged and farming is impossible. Officially, they are not slaves. They are taxpayers paying in labor. They receive bread, beer, sometimes meat. Rations, not wages. The brilliance of the system is that it feels fair. You give grain when you can. You give labor when you can't farm. In return, the gods keep order, the Nile returns, and Egypt endures. The transaction is never framed as extraction. It's framed as balance, ma'at, cosmic order. Economic ideology disguised as morality. Temples grow powerful. They are not just religious centers, they are warehouses, lenders, employers, and courts. A farmer borrows grain before planting season. He repays after harvest with extra. Interest exists, quietly. Miss the repayment and something changes. Your land status, your obligations, your future. There is no prison system as we imagine it. Punishment is economic. You work more, you owe longer, you lose autonomy, piece by piece. Middle Kingdom, around 1900 BCE. The system matures. Records multiply, specialization deepens, officials oversee officials, audits exist, inspections exist. Corruption also exists. A sack disappears, a number adjusts, a record clarifies. The genius of the system is that corruption is not eliminated, it's absorbed. As long as grain keeps flowing upward and labor keeps flowing downward, the machine tolerates leakage. Until the Nile fails. A weak flood, then another. Granaries empty faster than planned. The redistribution engine stutters. Confidence erodes before food does. People still obey at first because they always have. But hunger changes perception. Local officials hoard, temples protect their own, records drift from reality. For the first time, the state looks mortal. The lesson is brutal and permanent. Centralization creates power, but also fragility. New Kingdom, around 1500 BCE. Expansion saves the system. Military campaigns bring gold from Nubia, silver from trade, tribute from conquered lands. Metals do not circulate as coins, they circulate as units of account. Nothing changes hands, everything changes ownership. This abstraction allows scale. The economy is no longer limited by harvest cycles alone. Labor, tools, animals, land, all convertible, all countable. People understand less, authority understands more. By the time Ramses builds his monuments, the system is complete. Faith at the top, records in the middle, dependence at the bottom. It is efficient, stable, ruthless, and admired because Egypt looks eternal. Stone lasts, ledgers don't. What we remember are monuments. What actually ruled were numbers. This is not a primitive economy. It is a prototype, and almost everything that comes after it borrows from it.
The river keeps flowing. That's the mistake most people make when thinking about the Egyptian economy. They imagine collapse as an event, a dramatic fall, a sudden end. Egypt doesn't collapse like that. It stretches, it thins, it adapts. The system learns to survive its own limits. Late New Kingdom, around 1200 BCE. The floods become less reliable, not catastrophic, just inconsistent, enough to make planning harder, enough to make margins thinner. Margins matter now. The bureaucracy has grown heavy. More officials, more temples, more mouths that produce nothing but paperwork and prayers. The granaries still exist. The records still look clean. On papyrus, Egypt is still rich. On the ground, people feel something shifting. Rations arrive late, smaller, more conditional. A farmer counts his sacks twice before handing them over. He doesn't say anything, he just hesitates half a second longer than his father would have. That hesitation is new. The scribes notice. They don't react with force, they react with procedure. More inspections, more recalculations, more corrections. Control tightens when confidence loosens. Upper Egypt, local administrators begin acting like owners instead of managers. Officially, everything still belongs to the pharaoh. Practically, distance creates opportunity. Grain moves sideways before it moves up. A sack disappears here, a favor repaid there, a cousin exempted, a debt extended indefinitely. The system still works, but not evenly. Inequality sharpens, not between rich and poor in a modern sense, but between those inside the machine and those crushed by it. Temple economies grow stronger than the central state. Priests control land, labor, and credit. They speak for gods, but negotiate like bankers. A farmer kneels. "I can't repay this season." The priest doesn't raise his voice. Then next season belongs to the temple. No threat, no anger, just arithmetic. This is the moment the economy quietly changes character. It stops being purely redistributive. It starts becoming extractive. Late Bronze Age collapse, Eastern Mediterranean. Trade routes fracture, foreign markets vanish, tribute dries up. Egypt feels it immediately. Gold stops flowing in, silver becomes scarce, Deben values fluctuate. The abstraction that once allowed scale now transmits instability. The system was built to manage agricultural risk, not geopolitical shock. The pharaoh issues decrees, grain prices are fixed by order, labor obligations are expanded. The response is always the same: more control. But control cannot create surplus, it can only redistribute what remains. Records multiply again, not because production increases, but because accountability becomes obsessive. Officials document everything to protect themselves. If it's written, it wasn't your fault. Paperwork becomes armor. Villages begin to empty. People drift quietly, not as rebellion, but as survival, moving closer to temples, closer to storehouses, closer to anything that still feeds. The state interprets movement as disorder. Order must be restored. Forced labor increases. Projects continue even when they no longer make economic sense. Monuments are built not because resources are abundant, but because stopping would signal weakness. Stone becomes propaganda. The pharaoh must look eternal, even if the system underneath is tired. Around 1070 BCE, central authority fractures. Egypt does not fall apart violently, it fragments administratively. Regional powers emerge. Temple cities act independently. Records no longer flow cleanly to a single center. The machine still exists, it's just no longer unified. And something fascinating happens. Local economies become more flexible. Barter increases. Informal exchange grows. People trade directly, quietly, bypassing official channels when possible. The state notices, but lacks the reach to fully stop it. For the first time in centuries, the economy breathes without permission. Not freely, but less centrally. Coins will come later. Foreign rulers will bring them. Greeks, Persians, Romans. When coins arrive, historians will say Egypt modernized. But that's not true. Coins don't replace the old system. They sit on top of it. Taxes are still collected, records are still sacred, temples still act like banks, labor obligations still exist. Money doesn't break the machine, it just makes it portable. Under the Ptolemies, Greek administrators marvel at what they inherit: an already trained population to comply, a tax system already internalized, an economy already comfortable with abstraction. They add interest rates, standardized coinage, more aggressive monetization. The logic remains the same: control food, control records, control belief. Rome takes over. Same system, new language. The Nile still floods, grain still moves upward first. Egypt becomes Rome's breadbasket. The most advanced empire in the world relies on a system designed 3,000 years earlier. That's the real legacy, not pyramids. Infrastructure of obedience. When Rome collapses, Egypt changes rulers again. Arabs, Ottomans, Europeans. Every new power studies the same thing first: land, water, taxes. The script never changes much because the original design was too good. What ancient Egypt proves is uncomfortable. You don't need money to build inequality. You don't need markets to enforce debt. You don't need violence if belief and dependency do the work. You just need a predictable resource, centralized storage, reliable records, and a story that makes extraction feel like order. Egypt called it Ma'at: balance, justice, cosmic necessity. Modern systems call it efficiency, stability, fiscal responsibility. Different words, same logic. The farmer by the Nile didn't think he was oppressed. He thought he was participating in the natural order of the universe. That's the most effective economic control ever invented. Because when people believe the system is sacred, they police themselves. The river keeps flowing. Empires come and go. Ledgers change shape, but the idea survives. Turn food into leverage. Turn records into truth. Turn survival into obligation. Egypt didn't disappear. It replicated. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. This was never just ancient history. It was a prototype that worked too well.
If this video helped you see ancient Egypt in a new way, hit like. It tells YouTube this kind of deep, real history is worth sharing. Subscribe if you want more stories about how money, power, and systems actually work, not just in the past, but today. More episodes are coming, and once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it.